So there was an interesting peel up last week, Eimear, from somebody that's featured in the Sunday World a couple of times over the years. A guy called Martin Murray, who is a farmer who really doesn't look like your typical drug dealer, it has to say.
No.
But he's appealing a lengthy sentence. He got an 8-year prison term with a couple of years suspended for a large haul of cannabis, which was stopped in a truck he was driving.
Yeah.
The basis of his appeal is complex, as these things are.
Yeah.
But it's basically that the guards gave evidence that he was the target of the operation.
Yeah, so he was given a 10 years sentence with 2 years suspended, and as you said, he's a rural cattle farmer. He ran a dairy farm in Moneygall, which is on the Offaly Tipperary border. People would know it because Barack Obama had links to it, but
no links to the drug dealing.
No links, but links to Moneygall, because I was just trying to think how that's the only reason I know it, and the fact that when you drive by it, it now has Obama Plaza in it. So that's the only. So that's how a lot of people would know Moneygall. But anyway, so this is where he'd come from, and he was obviously stopped. His lorry was stopped in 2017, and when they dug into the lorry, they found these drugs. So yeah, he put up a defence, and basically what seems to have happened is the senior counsel. So obviously when you are before the courts, you have, if you're before, especially with a jury trial, you're obviously going to have a legal team initially as a solicitor, and then you'll be appointed as senior and junior counsel. So his senior counsel came off record, and then it was basically asked if he was okay with his solicitor to run the case, which I don't really hear of much in terms of a jury trial. So the solicitor ran the case, and essentially now the appeal, what they're trying to argue in the appeal is that there was hearsay evidence, which is basically evidence that Gardaí believed certain things were happening. So they stopped the lorry because they believed, they were aware of this farmer and believed that he'd have drugs in his truck. And essentially the appeal court was told by his counsel now that this was obviously going to prejudice before the jury, because
he had been driving the truck, but he'd said he hadn't known what was in the truck effectively.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that would be the thing. And of course they seem to have been given a little bit of, I suppose, encouragement in that the judge one of the 3 court judges did remark that it did not seem to be any need to give this information at all about it.
Of course, yeah, because I suppose like when you run these trials, it's based on is there physical evidence, circumstantial evidence, but I guess, this is why we have legal arguments. You hear this constantly in serious trials about how, it's decided before a judge in the absence of a jury if they can put certain information before the jury. So in this case, the state, as part of this appeal, basically argued that, well, we were told by his team, his solicitor, that they were happy for this evidence to go ahead. So, and that he was happy to run this trial. So it was on them to make an argument against it.
Yeah. And of course, we put up the appeal copy. People can read it on sundayworld.com.
Yeah.
And we have a picture of him, of course, at the time. The other papers don't have him, and the reason we have a picture is because he has appeared in the Sunday World before.
Okay.
Martin Murray is an interesting character. I mean, he's running a dairy farm, not in the middle of nowhere, not to get in that trouble, but he despite all of his appearances, I suppose, he had connections with some very serious criminals over the years.
Okay.
He was a known associate of a guy called Derek Maradona Dunn. Derek Maradona Dunn was a heroin dealer. He was one of the guys who was named by Tony Gregory, if you remember, in the Dáil, really a focus of some of those anti-heroin marches back in the late 80s, early 90s. Derek Maradona Dunn was in a relationship with the daughter of George the Penguin Mitchell, and he was shot dead in Amsterdam. So a very serious criminal figure. He was called Maradona Dunn because he was such a talented footballer.
And he has a conviction for heroin dealing.
Yes, he did. In the late 90s, Murray was given, he was convicted of possession of heroin with intent to supply and given a 7-year sentence after he was caught with a large consignment of the drug in Naas, County Kildare. So a very serious conviction. He'd also had a number of other He'd also come before the courts previously in 1996 in a case related to what was described as a botched cattle fraud and using forged bank checks drafts, which again was quite a large amount of money involved.
Yeah, and you can see as well that he was obviously released from prison in the early 2000s. Obviously went back to his dairy farm, and it was funny that he tried to sue solicitors for that previous case, saying they misrepresented him and caused him a lot of worries. So he's obviously had a misfortune to have several issues with his legal teams over the years.
And again, even in that case, that heroin case, which is a serious case, obviously with a very lengthy prison sentence, he had a number of appeals, including going all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's another one we'll follow. He's an interesting that these guys, they come up again and again. And we can recycle our old pictures when
this picture is quite standout. She's not someone that you can imagine, because he's argued cases to the Supreme Court, and he was getting testimonials when he was sentenced for the most recent one. He was getting testimonials from farmers and from a vet and from a mechanic and all members of the community. So when he's not someone that you would imagine would be tied up in this, but there you go, you never know. But that case, so the appeal has been put back. There's basically they want to go back to the DPP to clear up certain things. And the application for that was granted, so it's going to be back in court in July. Yeah,
and it certainly seems that he has some reasons for optimism given some of the comments of the judges. So, okay, Eimear, well, we'll come back to it when that appeal is heard.
Thanks, Niall.
Thanks very much.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.